Hello everyone, Dan from Frontline MCOC here with a review of Reed Richards. As a member of the Marvel Contest of Champions Content Creator Program, I was granted early access to a 5-star, rank 3 SIG 200 Mr. Fantastic for the purposes of this review. I do not get to keep this champion, and he will be removed from my account shortly after this review goes live. So let's sit back, watch a few fights so you can get a sense of what Mr. Fantastic can do, and I'll take you through the review. The full text of this review is on the Frontline MCOC blog and will be linked in the description below. So Reed Richards, he's the final member of the Fantastic Four. It's been a whole year, but he is here. Initial impressions, he's not a heavy hitter. He is going to be a utility champ, and he may even become another Nick Fury or Heimdall, where you're going to want him on the team even if you aren't playing him. He's a key synergy piece for all the other Fantastic Four members, so if you're a big fan of Invisible Woman or Human Torch or The Thing, you're probably going to want him on the team anyway. But he's also going to have a lot of uses for other champions like Void, Darkhawk, Wasp, and others that benefit from having debuffs on the opponent. This is an observation I just want to give credit to Cam and Panda Man Pete for, because they were actually the first ones I saw that pointed it out. So at his base, Reed Richards relies on placing multiple debuffs on the opponent. He does this through both his special attacks and his pre-fight abilities. So he has elements of both a single fight and a multi-fight ramp-up champion. He has persistent charges. He starts the quest with 2, and he can store up to 5. Now, the good news is that these charges are really, really easy to build up and retain, so you don't have to worry about keeping him topped off. So what he uses these persistent charges for is to activate pre-fight debuffs. These debuffs are Petrify, Suppress, and Siphon, and they help Reed control the enemy's power gain, regen, and debuffs, while damaging his opponent via the Fantastic Four synergy that I'll get to in a little bit. What's new about Reed is that when you activate these pre-fight abilities, you can then select another champ, take that champion into the fight, and the abilities will still be active. So if you're a Void player and you're thinking about, oh, I can take Reed in and automatically have 2 or 3 debuffs on the opponent, well, that gets pretty exciting for obvious reasons. Reed also has this mechanic called Careful Study. This is somewhat similar to an Awakened Sentinel's analysis charge. It works in a different way, but it has the same concept of where you want to get your opponent to throw the same special attack multiple times in a row, because it's going to weaken them. When they do this, Careful Study debuffs are going to be placed on the opponent. It reduces the opponent's special attack. After 3 Careful Study debuffs are applied, it converts to a passive for the rest of the fight, and then the next 5 fights the opponent is in. So there's probably going to be uses for Reed where you take him in and you're going to sort of neuter the opponent's ability to do damage through specials, and then you're going to send in the champ that you really want to take the fight, and it'll be an easier fight. These Careful Study debuffs count as 3 debuffs for Reed's other abilities, so they have a significant amount of value. Now, as far as the signature ability, Reed has 2 parts to it. The first part is a defensive one. It allows him an extra chance to evade an unblockable hit. And the second is to increase his damage based on those Careful Study passives on the opponent. So these are nice abilities to have. They're not Star-Lord Aegon level important, but you do want them if you have a choice. Now, Reed is currently the highest prestige 5-star science champion in the game. He's number 9 overall for 5-star champions. So it's pretty obvious that we're going to see some SIG 200 Mr. Fantastics run around the battle realm pretty soon. As far as team building and synergies, Reed has a lot of synergies. If you're fighting with Reed, you're probably going to be bringing the entire Fantastic Four, but his wife, Invisible Woman, she's the critical one, because she makes his debuffs last 25% longer, and this guy is all about the debuffs. You need his debuffs up to do damage to the opponent. She also grants the Fantastic Four synergy, which causes the opponent to take 4% of Reed's current attack rating as direct damage per second. Now, Thing, he's another important one to have because he grants all members of the Fantastic Four a Fury buff on the last hit of their Special 2. And the Special 2 is the one you're going to want to use a lot with Reed because he refreshes the pre-fight ability debuff. So you're going to want to cycle in the SB2 in most scenarios. There's another good synergy called Shared Knowledge Robotics. This is with She-Hulk, Sentry, Dr. Octopus, and Vulture. And this allows Tech and Science champions, any Tech and Science champion, to place an indefinite power sting that can stack up to 3 times on the opponent. There's also a Reed Richards synergy with himself. You have to bring multiple Reed Richards. Obviously, I couldn't test this one as I only had one Reed Richards in my account. Moving on to Masteries. Reed has no immunities, and he needs to spam specials to keep the debuffs and damage up, so he doesn't appear to be a suicide-friendly champ. As a debuff-heavy champ, Despair likely is going to have some uses, and possibly Inequity and Resonate as well, but these are not Masteries I have unlocked and run a lot, so I unfortunately wasn't able to test these. As far as a defender, Reed does have a built-in evade, so that's obviously going to have some use on defense, but his specials are easy to dodge, so anyone with True Strike, looking at you, Killmonger, should be able to take him down really, really easily. But one thing to be careful of is the duped Reed does have an extra chance to evade unblockable special attacks. So just be careful, if you're throwing a special 2 with a Corvus, you could wind up in some trouble there. Going through his rotation and special attacks, the special attack places a taunt and stagger debuff on the defender, so this is the utility special attack for Reed. It has obvious benefits versus power gain, all or nothing, spite nodes, and versus buff heavy champs that you need to control. The special 2 is a special you want to rely on to build up Reed's damage, especially when you've activated those pre-fight abilities, because the special 2 along with the heavy attack is going to refresh those abilities, but the special 2 does one more thing. It copies those abilities, so you're going to do even more damage, and it can copy them up to 3 times. It also places a 5-second shock debuff on the opponent, so you do get a damaging debuff there. The special 3 gives Reed a passive 20-second Fury if the opponent has a debuff on them, and let's face it, with Reed, you're almost always going to have more than one debuff on the opponent. You do get an attack bonus increased for each debuff, so this is going to be useful if you're taking Reed into longer fights against a stacked opponent. You go with the maximum number of pre-fight debuffs, you build that up, and at that point, that's when you're going to want to build up to the special 3 and get the big Fury. So pros and cons for the champion. I found him to be a really easy champion to intercept with. I did find his first medium attack does feel a little slow, so I'm not a fan of that, but he did seem to have good reach on the intercepts. He has some cool animation additions with the rest of the Fantastic Four, so even if you don't want to play Reed that much, you should put him on the team and check him out because there's some cool little Easter eggs in there. Through his pre-fight abilities, Reed, he's a different kind of power control champ. He's not a power drainer, but he will limit the opponent's power gain, shutting them down that way, and then he can use taunt debuffs to force the opponent to throw a special, and with the robotic synergy, punish them with the power sting. The unblockable specials, they're going to have some uses against certain opponents, but you should know they do come at the cost of overall damage to Reed because you can't go in to the fight with any pre-fight debuffs and get the unblockable specials. As far as his persistent charges go, as I mentioned before, it's extremely easy to keep them topped off, so after the first fight, you can go in with all 3 pre-fight debuffs active if you want. Now, as far as the cons, This guy has quite the owner's manual. He has an extensive champion description. He has numerous abilities. It is a lot of reading to do. So even if you're an experienced summoner, there is a barrier to entry here because you do need to read all these abilities and learn how to use them the right way. If you just go in and start going through your normal 5-hit combos, you're probably not going to have a good time with him. He's not likely the best option for timed fights because you're trying to build up all these debuffs. So I don't know how much utility he's going to have as a war attacker, but I do think there's scenarios where you're going to want to bring him to support your main damage dealer in war. One thing that I didn't like about the champion is it feels like you're always watching the timers to see when those pre-fight debuffs are going to expire and when you have to refresh them. So in a way, it feels like you're more fighting against preventing the debuffs from expiring and falling off more than you're building up a champion and doing more and more damage. You're always like, oh, if I don't refresh the special, if I don't get the heavy in, if I don't get to the special 2 in time, then I'm going to lose all the damage I've built up, and that's not a great feeling. Another con is his heavy attack is key to his rotation because it refreshes the persistent charge debuffs, but it has a really short reach, and I think it's going to be a tricky one to heavy counter with, so that's going to limit Reed's effectiveness in stun immune fights. Another con is you're going to have to collect the whole Fantastic Four to really get the most out of Reed, and with Act 6 having the 5-star gate, you're going to need everybody at a 5-star better for endgame content. You're going to need at least Invisible Woman, likely Human Torch and Thing, and you're probably going to want to run Sentry or She-Hulk with them as well. So then you've got a 5-attacker team that is all science champions, and personally I like to have a lot of diversity in the classes that I bring on a questing team to be able to handle a lot of challenges. Now certainly the Fantastic Four as a unit has a lot of utility, but they're still all science champs, so that does limit you. Another thing to worry about is most of the skill champions that can shrug debuffs, and certainly the debuff immune nodes, Reed has no business being taken in against those nodes because he's just not going to do any damage. You can't build him up at all. It's really, really going to be a grind. And one more thing to remember, if you're using Reed for the crossfight abilities, that's where you activate his pre-fight abilities and then take another champion into the fight, you're only going to be able to do that once or twice at the start of the quest, and then you're actually going to have to play Reed to build up those charges back up if you're going to need to use them again. So in general, when you're playing Reed, you want to activate as many pre-fight abilities as possible. That's how you're going to get your maximum damage. Your rotation is going to be weaving in heavy attacks as you build up your power meter to get to the special 2 to, again, refresh the debuffs and use the special 2 to copy them. So that's it for my general overview of Reed Richards. He's a little bit complicated to get into him. I did like him a little bit more as I got the chance to play with him and try to find some useful matchups. I do think he's going to be a good champion to have in your toolkit, but he's not going to be anyone's primary damage dealer, I don't think. And at the end of the day, I don't think as an attacker, I don't think he's going to be one of those champions that redefines the contest, but he's got a lot of cool uses, and I think it's going to take a while to uncover all the ways that he can benefit the different champions that are in the contest. All right, so that's it for this review of Reed Richards. Like I said, the link is in the description below to the written version of this review and more information on Marvel Contest of Champions at Frontline MCOC. So I will see you for the next one. Thanks. Bye.